Good morning, Eastside Youth. Hope you guys are doing well. This is your Sunday morning, a little bit of youth, little devotional reading. Sorry we're not there. We are, by the time you guys are watching this, we're going to be driving back from Idaho, which is where I am now. So if you're looking at the background, wondering why it's not the church office or why it's not the board games that you've been seeing recently, I'm in my brother and sister-in-law's office downstairs, and so here we are. But I wanted to make sure that something went out for you guys for Sunday morning youth time, even though we're not meeting together in person. And this is just one of those things. Before we get into it, this is a good example of something positive, at least for myself, that came from, well, and is still coming from, because the virus is still around, but that is like a product of having that whole situation happened, is getting in this practice of, not just for me, not just going, well, we're not there, so it'll just be next week. Is trying to have something for you guys, um, even though we are apart. We had a lot of practice at being apart for a while, and now we're apart because we're just out of town. But I figured might as well try to put something out for you guys. We're going to be in 2 Kings chapter 18, and we're getting pretty close to the end of 2 Kings. We've got just a handful of weeks left before we will finish out 2 Kings. And what I'd say is we're as we get to the end, there's going to be some longer chapters. Today is one of those, and so there's going to be some big sections. So before we get into it, I just want to remind you guys that there is no youth group tonight. Anna and I will still be on our way back, but there should be. I'm gonna have a video for tonight as well if you would like to watch that. And then we will be back together next Sunday. I believe it's July. Make sure I get this right. July 5th, we will be back together for regular Sunday morning and youth group, and then we will be getting information out to you guys soon about July events. So just keep an eye on that, and yeah, we'll hop right in here. 2 Kings chapter 18, and before we get going, last week we looked at the fall of Israel. So we talked about how one of the things that God told His people was that if you don't do this stuff, and if you enter into the land and you start to worship the gods that are in the land, I'll take you out of the land. And we looked at that in Numbers and Deuteronomy. Um, and we saw that happen for the people of Israel last week in Sunday morning youth during our time together. The Assyrian people came in, they took them captive, and they started to pull people out. And as a result, the Assyrian king brought people into the land to dwell there, and the worship that was happening in the land was this mix of the way that the Israelites worshipped and the way that these other peoples from around them worshipped, and they brought them together and they tried to mix the two. And as you're going to see, I believe in either tonight or next week in Deuteronomy, God has a lot to say about not only like that He is worshipped, but how and where and what the things that we do to worship God. And so, needless to say, is that this priest that was doing this last week, it was not true worship of God. They had some whack priest that was like, yeah, let's mix it all up. Um, and so this week we're going to transition back to the nation of Judah. Remember, we still have that split. We have an Israelite king and a Judean king. Last week we looked at Israel, who was in captivity, and this week we're jumping back over to Judea. So let's start reading 2 Kings chapter 18, starting in verse 1. In the third year of Hoshea, son of Elah, the king of Israel, Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah, and he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord according to all that David his father had done. He removed the high places and broke the pillars and cut down the Asherah, and he broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made, for until those days the people of Israel had made offerings to it. It was called Nehushtan. He trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel, so that there was none like him among all the kings of Judah after him, nor among those who were before him. For he held fast to the Lord. He did not depart from following him, but kept the commandments that the Lord commanded Moses. And the Lord was with him. Wherever he went out, he prospered. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and would not serve him. He struck down the Philistines as far as Gaza and its territory, from watchtower to fortified city. All right, so we're going to stop there. This is the kind of the introductory statement to this new king, Hezekiah. And just what you need to know and remember is the books of 1st and 2nd Kings are looking for this king. They're looking for this future king, this king who is going to turn them back, to bring them back to God, to unify them. Remember, the nation had split. All of this stuff. And we've been one king after another just missing the boat. These guys are corrupt. They're not worshiping God. They're leading their people astray. And then we get to Hezekiah. And what's cool is that Hezekiah, it says that he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. And now, lest we hear that and go, okay, awesome, he automatically gets a check. That has been said of multiple kings before him. And then the next sentence is, but this king did not do this. But the interesting thing about Hezekiah is it breaks that pattern of, but this king did not do this, and he does it. And it's this grand slam where we're reading and we go, wait a minute, Hezekiah is different. Because Hezekiah tears down all of the high places and the Asherah poles and these little mini places of worship that they had set up. He tears it all down. And we even get this note that he goes as far as to go way, way back to what it was supposed to be in the beginning, because the people of Israel had begun to worship that bronze serpent that Moses had stuck on a pole. That had turned into an idol for them. And so here, Hezekiah destroys it. He destroys this image that God had given them because the people had started worshiping it, because Hezekiah is going back to the basics of what it is they are supposed to do to worship God. And in my opinion, double thumbs up, Hezekiah is killing it. He's knocking it out of the park. He's having victory for his people as a result of that. So he strikes down, he rebels against the Syrian, he strikes down the Philistines. And it's just like, could Hezekiah be the one? That's kind of where we're at. Verse 9. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. And at the end of 3 years he took it in the 6th year of Hezekiah, which was the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel. Samaria was taken. The king of Assyria carried away the Israelites to Assyria and put them in Halah and on the Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes, because they did not obey the voice of the Lord their God, but transgressed his covenant, even all that Moses the servant of the Lord commanded. They neither listened nor obeyed. So this is just kind of a recap of what we looked at last week, that as while Hezekiah is ruling in Judea, the people of Israel are being taken captive and carried away to Assyria underneath their king, because, and the text tells us, because they did not get it right. They did not turn all the way back to God. Yet in Judea we have this king, Hezekiah, who is leading in a way and is calling for the people to turn back to God fully. It's good news for the Judean people here. Continuing on, verse 13. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I will bear. And the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord, and the treasuries of the king's house. At that time Hezekiah stripped the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord, and from the doorpost that Hezekiah, king of Judah, had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria then sent the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabshakeh. Those three are like delegation groups, Assyrian delegation groups, with a great army from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem. And they went up, and they came to Jerusalem. And when they arrived, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is in the highway of the washers' field. And when they called for the king, there came out to them Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder. And the Rabshakeh said to them, Say to Hezekiah, Thus says the great king, the king of Assyria, On what do you rest this trust of yours? Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? In whom do you now trust that you have rebelled against me? Behold, you're trusting in Egypt. that broken reed of a staff which will pierce the hand of any man who leans on it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who trust in him. But if you say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar in Jerusalem? Come now, make a wager with my master, the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses if you're able on your part to set riders on them. How then can you repulse a single captain among the least of my master's servants, when you trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Moreover, is it without the Lord that I have come up against this place to destroy it? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. Then Eliakim the son of Hilkiah and Shebna and Joah said to the Rabshakeh, please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. Do not speak to us in the language of Judah within the hearing of the people who are on the wall. But the Rabshakeh said to them, has my master sent me to speak these words to your master and to you, and not to the men sitting on the wall who are doomed with you to eat their own dung and drink their own urine? Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out in a loud voice in the language of Judah, hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you out of my hand. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, by saying, the Lord will surely deliver us, and this city will not be given into the hand of the king of the Assyrians. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me and come out to me. Then each one of you will eat of his own vine, and each one of you his own fig tree, and each one of you will drink the water in his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like our own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey, that you may live and not die. Do not listen to Hezekiah when he misleads you by saying, the Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations ever delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Eva? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who among all the gods of the lands have delivered their lands out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? But the people were silent and answered him not a word, for the king's command was, do not answer him. Then Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him the words of the Rabshakeh. So that's a long section. Sorry that was a bit long, but what is going on here is a lot. So the king of Assyria sends these people out, and Hezekiah sends him money. He's like, yeah, here's money, go away, like whatever. He's getting back to the basics, and money was not like a big concern, I don't think. And the king of Assyria doesn't accept it. And so rather he sends this delegation out to Hezekiah. And when Hezekiah's leaders come out and meet them on this wall, it's Hezekiah's leaders, but there's also a bunch of people of Judah. And this group, called the Rabshakeh, they start shouting out that, has any nation beat the king of Assyria? The king of Assyria has beaten every single nation that has stood against him. And you think that you can stand over here in Jerusalem behind your God? That's what the king of Assyria's message is. And they even try to turn the people against King Hezekiah by saying, look it, he just destroyed all of the places where you worship. You go to worship your God at those places. He just destroyed them. He doesn't even believe this. They're trying to turn things on its head. And this is why it's very important, both in the case of the people of Judah at this time, but especially for us today, is to know our God and to know what is going on and to know what is real. Because there's going to be times where folks are going to say things that are not legit. And that's when we got to get into our word and get into prayer and listen to what the Holy Spirit's telling us to make sure that it jives with what is true and right according to God. So they say, like, Hezekiah's whack, man. He's trying to tear this whole thing down. Why don't you just surrender? And then they notice what they promise. Notice what they promise to the people of Judah. The king of Assyria says, I'll take you to a land that's even better than your own. There's honey, there's abundance, you can't get enough, there's water for everyone, there's figs for everyone, there's food for everyone. And what the king of Assyria is doing is, and what the author of 2 Kings wants us to see, is this king, the people of Judah have an option here. They have the promises of God that they have experienced all this time in their history in the Bible, put up against this new promise of the king of Assyria. And it's a similar promise. You're going to have a land, you're going to have abundance, and you're going to dwell there. All you have to do is bow the knee. All you have to do is say, yeah, you're right. You got it. Our God's not able. And Hezekiah told the people, don't talk to this guy. Don't answer him. Because next week we're going to look at what happens with Hezekiah around this. It leads us with a cliffhanger. But next Sunday morning we're going to look at Hezekiah's response and what he does in response to this king and this Assyrian king coming out and challenging him, and more importantly, challenging his God. And the last time I think in Scripture that we see this big, like, kind of grandiose, kind of braggadocious claim or challenge to God is in the image of David and Goliath, where Goliath comes out and he's not just taunting Israel, he's taunting their God. He's like, your God can't save you. And the last time we're met with that, we see David get sent out, and God uses David to save his people. So I think it's within reason to, just as readers of the Bible, to be expecting this Hezekiah character to be used by God to do something crazy for his people. So that's what we're going to look at next week. Sorry we're not with you guys. We do miss you, but we've had a great time over here in Idaho, but we are looking forward to seeing you guys again next week. So yeah, just keep an eye. We'll have a video tonight for our Deuteronomy Part 2. But until then, we love you guys, and we will see you soon. Take care.